Welcome to the Revealing Genius live session. This is a facilitated executive roundtable with a live audience that is broadcast simultaneously on YouTube and LinkedIn. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Our topic today is this: amplify what your brand stands for, how 3 executives grew their LinkedIn followers to 30K plus. I am so excited to have this trio together. Wait till you meet them. Just incredible human beings. Our speakers are backstage right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce them one at a time in alpha order by last name. You'll meet Blake, you'll meet Joe, you'll meet Niven. And then we're going to do a facilitated Q&A so that you can learn how they did it, what they did. We're going to leave some time for questions at the end, maybe a quarter to the top of the hour. And feel free to drop questions into the chat and we'll try to answer as many as we possibly can. And then we'll wrap up about 5 minutes to the top of the hour with the date for the next live. And then also we're going to have each of our panelists share one game-changing piece of advice to end the session today. So it is my pleasure to welcome Blake Lemoy from Niagara Falls, New York. He's the Director of Business Development for Paid. He has been instrumental in shaping the company's future by crafting strategic initiatives to expand the client base, boost revenue, and solidify market presence. And a lot of it was done through LinkedIn. Welcome, Blake. Glad you're here.
Hi, Mary. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here. Our next panelist is Joseph Polanin, Joe Polanin from Tampa Bay, Florida. He's an award-winning CEO, combat veteran, Navy SEAL, #1 best-selling author. He leads elite global enterprises to succeed on complex missions in high-risk environments, despite every obstacle. As a fractional chief operating officer of the consultancy called the Alakai Leadership Group. Welcome, Joe.
Welcome, Mary. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's absolutely my honor and privilege to be with you today and Blake and Niven and with our audience. Thank you so much for having me.
Likewise. Thanks for being here. And finally, all the way from Johannesburg, South Africa, is Niven Postma. She is a leadership and organizational politics expert. Organizational is spelled with an S. She's an advisor, an author, a lecturer, a keynote speaker. She writes for Harvard Business Review. She contributes to LinkedIn Learning, and she has grown, all 3 of them have grown their LinkedIn followers to 30K plus, and we're going to hear about it today. So welcome, everyone. Blake, Joe, Niven, so excited to have you here. All right, let's dive right in because I know that we have folks on the call who are very anxious to hear how did you do this? So we're going to do roundtable. We're just going to go Blake, Joe, Niven. We're going to go around the horn, if you will. And our first question is, Blake, what does your brand stand for, and what was your goal for growing your followers on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so since we met, I really thought about this a little bit, and it's business growth. I mean, I'm a technology nerd. I grew up in the West Coast and got to see the digital transformation, carved a little niche in payroll, HR. I was a compliance officer, and then as a sales and marketing director, I really feel it's building trust and transparency. So I share what I do and my journey as a sales and marketing director. And I've kind of used LinkedIn and my digital presence to expand beyond my in-person and networking events.
And one thing you shared with me too, as we were talking, prior to this show, is you had a blast doing it, right? Like this was really fun for you.
Oh, it was a platform for me to kind of a soapbox to share what I was seeing and going through with the bank and in the financial industry as it was transforming, and then building up my personal brand.
Brilliant. Thank you, Blake. Joe, how about you? What does your brand stand for, and what was your goal for growing your followers on LinkedIn?
Mary, thanks so much. Alakai is all about building and inspiring fantastic teams to achieve seemingly impossible goals in any environment as you noted in your very kind and gracious introduction, despite any obstacle. So it's all about building teams and helping those teams grow from where they are now to where they want to be. And relevant to LinkedIn, as Blake was talking about, and as you mentioned earlier, I believe in life, in business, and in social media. You have to have a vision of where you want to go, and you have to have a strategy and a roadmap of how you're going to get there. And with that simple focus, you can say, okay, here's what I want to do. Here's why I'm on the platform to begin with. For me, it was all about building meaningful relationships. And then from there, you can figure out what you want to talk about and who your audience is. But without that firm foundation, as I like to say, don't think about what you're going to put on the 17th floor of the building when you haven't set the foundation and built floor one yet. So for me, it's all about having that vision, having that strategy, and then the means and the action steps seem to fall into place.
Absolutely. And you did the work to set that foundation. It required some discipline, yes?
Oh, absolutely. There's a rigor to it. And, LinkedIn provides you, if you're using LinkedIn as the platform, as we're talking about today, LinkedIn provides you all the necessary tools and the rules, so to speak, of the algorithm. All you have to do is follow them, adapt to them as they change, and leverage them for the benefit of what you're doing with your strategy. So there are so many opportunities per week to send out in meaningful invitation requests and the like. And that's what I did. I brought in a coach, somebody who I trusted. They told me what the rules of the road were, and I just did what they told me to do, and I stuck with it.
Good to know. Thank you, Joe. Niven, tell us about you. What does your brand stand for, and what was your goal for growing your followers on LinkedIn to 30K plus?
Yeah, Mary. So I suppose it stands for two things. The one is strategy and empathy and impact. And the other one is trying to avoid irony. And so it was interesting with Blake's prompting. I went back into my history and realized, I joined LinkedIn in 2008, but my first post was in 2020. And what prompted it was this, maybe I should avoid some irony here. And so in my politics work, one of the things I say very strongly is that invisible contributions have no value. No political value, that is. I mean, they may well have moral and social and ethical value, and these are not small or insignificant values. But from a political point of view, invisible contributions are meaningless. And I suddenly woke up the one day and I thought, Niv, maybe you should live this a little bit. And so on the one hand, yes, I was really allergic to what I thought was the narcissism and self-promotion and humble bragging. And that's an extreme of any social media platform, and LinkedIn is not an exception. But on the other end is this extreme of being invisible. So can I strategically, with empathy, make an impact, initially just speaking to myself, but from there, curating and collecting a community that actually I really value. So I would summarize it as those two things.
Wonderful. And I've been through many of your posts, Niv, and they're so pithy, they're so thought-provoking, and it's almost like you're talking directly to me, like to one person. They're really, really well crafted. So thank you for that. And Rebecca, who is backstage, who is running our live, I wanted to give her a shout out. She's going to be dropping the LinkedIn profiles for Blake and Joe and Niven into the chat. So if you'd like to connect with any of them, please go ahead and do so. And Blake, prior to coming on, we were backstage and we were talking about when did we join? And you prompted us to go ahead and have a look. Can you share with the audience how do you find out when we signed up for LinkedIn and when the first log happened?
Yeah, so random, right? Like this is me when, how do I do it? And just look up in Google. Sure enough, it says go into your settings. So up by your little picture, you go into settings. And then the data privacy, it shows a log of every single thing that you did in LinkedIn. So you go to your very first log. And believe it or not, mine was back in 2007. The creation was back in 2003. So, it's funny to think how far we've come considering smartphones. I think we're in the 05, 06, and LinkedIn was before a smartphone, but how far we've gone since then.
Yeah, for sure. So Blake 2007, Joe, was yours 2020, if I recall, is that right? Your first post?
You're absolutely right, Mary. Yeah, I first created an account in March of 2020. I hit 30,000 connections almost 3 years to the day later. So it was about 10,000 a year, and for me, and similar to what you were talking about, Niven, I didn't start posting right away. I didn't really think about that. Everything I was doing was about building meaningful relationships, and I still do that, and that's what it's about for me. But about a year later, I said, okay, similar to what Niven talked about, what do I love to write about? How is that aligned with not only my personal brand and my vision and my mission for Alakai, but would anybody be interested in that? Is that something that would be useful and meaningful to others? And I really thought, and you taught me this, Mary, I really thought hard and long about those topics, and I focused on effective organizations and the qualities of exceptional leaders. So there's an individual element to leadership and there's an organizational element, and that's what I wrote about. And once I had that figured out and I had my outline, the posts just kind of came through, and there's an authenticity that comes from that, and you see it when you read wonderful posts like Niven writes and Blake and you, Mary. There's an authenticity and a genuineness that readers and other leaders can see clearly. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And Niven, it was like a slow ramp for you. So you have this LinkedIn profile, but it took a little while to post. Yes, tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I suppose like a lot of people, I was a voyeur and but not much of a sharer, I say. I'm like, how does this work? And like I said, I think because the more visible extreme was something that really didn't sit well with me. In fact, made me quite queasy that I went to the other extreme. And then I had an article come out in 2020, and I thought, gosh, this is an important article. This is a big deal for me. And I'm not being very intelligent about leveraging this incredible platform, of which LinkedIn is, my primary one. And so it just feels like the 21st century professional equivalent of if a tree fell in a forest and no one heard it, did it make a sound? If I wrote this great article that I'm really thrilled about and no one knows about it, did it matter? And I thought, no. And so similar to Joe, I thought, well, look, I don't know where to start with this stuff. And I signed up for a social media boot camp for 6 weeks. With all kinds of the fundamentals that I had to be taken through, because a lot of this stuff is very different to what good manners and professionalism would oblige you to do in real life. The fact that you have to like your own comment to get some traction, you have to comment on your own posts, things like that. I mean, they're completely different to what a normal person would do in real life. So some of those building blocks I just had to figure out. And then from there, get intentional around it.
Excellent. Thank you. So Joe hired a coach, Niven hired a coach. Rebecca in the discussion is saying this is very useful. Oh my gosh, Rebecca, wait until you hear the rest of what Blake and Joe and Niven have to share. So speaking of building blocks, let's talk about 1 to 3 things that worked really well to achieve growth, and how long did it take you to get to 30K followers? Blake, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, mine's been a long haul. From 2007 when I created it, I probably wasn't very active on it either until about 2012, 2014, but it was intentionally engaging with my peers, creating that authentic connection. I was doing business development for a web and marketing firm. So, web development, social media, SEO. So why not do it myself? So creating that authentic content of the story that I was going through as a sales and marketing person, and then testing different formats and seeing what's working. I mean, back when we first started, you could post a picture, you could do just text and content. That stuff does not work, and it does not engage anymore. Several times a day sometimes, or several times a week. You just have to figure out your cadence, what works with your schedule, and what resonates with your audience, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Blake. And Tidy's saying in the chat, thank you so much, Tidy, for being here. Great event, transformative deliberations. Just curious, Blake, did you create your own posts or did you hire someone to write them?
So I've been creating my own posts since the beginning. Occasionally, I've used Fiverr and Upwork for some video creation, some graphic design, but for the most part, it's been kind of like a living brand of what I offer to my clients. So it's kind of like a living portfolio.
Yeah, three very different topics too. Joe, how about you? What can you share with the audience? What worked well for you to achieve your growth? And it didn't take you very long. I mean, you got there, you were very deliberate though. I mean, you were
I was.
very intentional. Like, I mean, every day I saw you. I reposted things that because they were so authentic and so good. Tell us what worked.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, it was a relatively short period of time, as I mentioned earlier, it was about 3 years. But you're right, and I was intentional, and I had help from people who were better and smarter than me, and were able to help me focus, to prioritize, and to be intentional, as Niven said. Three things I'll share. And number one, learn the rules. Number two, be adaptive, and number three, be consistent. Right. So the rules. There's an algorithm. There's a process. There's a space that we're in LinkedIn. 1.2 billion accounts, about 1.5 million that are actually active every day, and we are in an attention environment. So understand what the rules are, what the permissions are, how many people you can send a request to. If you're on LinkedIn Premium, what can you do differently than if you're on LinkedIn Basic? If you're using Sales Navigator, again, learn the rules. And then number two, adapt as they change. I am not a tech person, but I know that I think the LinkedIn algorithm changes at least once or twice a year. Articles will come out about it. Organizations will come out and talk about that. And as those rules change, adapt. You know, an old coach of mine used to say, when the rule book changes, learn the new rule book and play the game to win. Now, this isn't a game. It's our focus and our mission and what we're doing. But that analogy, I think, is relevant. And then be consistent. Stick to who you are, and talk about what you love, and write about what you love, and that will shine through. So learn the rules, be adaptive, and be consistent. And hey, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for those three. And Esther is here. Thank you so much for being here, Esther. And Bruno, we've got your back. Bruno, you're going to be the very first question when we get to the open Q&A, which is going to be about a quarter to the top of the hour. So thank you for being here. Niven, tell us what worked for you. How long did it take you to get to 30K?
Yeah, actually, I don't know, Mary. I think the thing that really got my attention was suddenly getting this email out of the blue from LinkedIn, oh, you're a top voice. How did that happen? How fabulous. And actually, to me, that's more of an achievement than the number of followers, because there's something about that is almost a seal of approval, a badge of credibility that I quite value, because that's a function of not just your number of followers, but actually the level of engagement and the level of reposting. So the value, the quality rather than the quantity. So sadly, I don't actually know. And like I say, once I got the blue badge, I was like, wow, well, this is fabulous. But I think in terms of the three steps, to just expand on what Joe said, so the rules, the things that I've told people, and let's use this platform to be explicit about some of those rules that people have found really helpful. I've mentioned the first one, like your own post. Cringe, but just do it. Nobody's noticing that you're laughing at your own jokes, liking your own comment. So the three important rules: post at roughly the same time every day, because then people kind of expect your post. I roughly post at about 7 a.m. South African time. We're very early risers in this country. And then I've got a lot of people in India and Australia. And so they see the post, it starts to get some traction, and then it carries on through the day. So I roughly post at the same time. Like that post, put in a comment after 10 minutes and like that comment, and put in another comment after 20 minutes and like that comment. The quicker you get the momentum, the better. And then the third thing is don't put URLs. It's something that people don't know, but don't put your URLs or any URL into a post. I thought it was just external URLs. So I thought the logic behind it was to keep you on LinkedIn. But in fact, even the URL for my LinkedIn course, you suddenly see the traffic dip if that's included. So I was playing around with that. And so even if the URL keeps you in LinkedIn, don't put it in until 20 minutes have passed, and then put it in the comment or edit your post. And that's why you'll often see posts with people saying link in the comments below. You're like, just put the link in the post. Well, that's why they don't.
Great. That's like a game changer. Thank you, Niven. Excellent. Love it. Really, really good insights. Really appreciate that. And Peter has a question. Peter, we've got your back. You'll be number 2 when we get to the open Q&A. Welcome. We are so glad that you are here. So Blake, did you find that it's better to focus on a niche or keep your content broad? And we have 3 very, very distinctive subjects here. Blake, marketing and sales. We have Joe with leadership. We have Niven with organizational politics. What did you learn from years of posting?
Niche. You have to. Even though a lot of what I talk in data and technology and B2B expertise is abroad, my newsletter in sales and marketing has almost 4,000 subscribers. That's the niche, that's my expertise. Although I'm in the payroll industry and I talk a lot of data and technology, my niche, my expertise is specifically talking that data and technology or that marketing tech stack. And that's resonated and built my audience. And that audience is the same audience that is also for my work.
Great. Thank you, Blake. Yeah. How about you, Joe? Is it niche or broad, or what did you find? And did you find there was higher performing folks or posts if it was niche, or better engagement when it was broad? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, Mary, I agree with Blake from the standpoint of niche. And there's a quote that I don't know who to attribute it to, but I've seen it a lot, both on and off the platform. And it is that you are the niche. So get really crisp and really clear and really focused on what is this thing that you love doing? What is this passion that you have? Number 2, why is that unique? And what is the delineation of that within and for your audience? And then, like we were talking about before, would people find that interesting? There's going to be a little experimentation. Some posts are going to outperform others. But I have found that when I stuck to my instincts and I said, okay, what am I passionate about? It's leadership. It's organizational leadership, and it's the qualities of individual leaders. Why is that unique? Okay, there are 100,000 leadership consultants out there. Why is what I'm doing unique? And I focused precisely on that interrelationship between the organization's vision, their strategy for making it happen, and the extent to which they inspire their people, that fusion and that synergy. And then I experimented and I tried out and I just wrote about what I loved and I followed it. And I stuck with it. So that for me is agree with Blake. Be precise, find out what you love, and stick with it.
Excellent, thank you, Blake. Joe, you're all about the niche. How about you, Niven? What are your thoughts? What was your experience? Did you find it was better to focus on a niche or keep your content broad? What did you find when you did a look back on some of your best performing posts?
Yeah, so I found a few things. Look, I mean, I think starting with what you love and intrigues you is a good starting point. Of course, my sisters would roll their eyes and say, well, what you love, Niven, is hearing the sound of your own opinions. So that aside, I do think starting from a place of this really intrigues me and this interests me is as good a place to start as any, and probably the most useful place to start. But I think it's a combination of 2 things for me. What do I love talking about? But equally, what do I love learning about? So for me, it's what do I put out? And where LinkedIn has been really useful is to start to think about over the past few years, the stuff I didn't know I knew, and so having to write a post every day, also made me quite intentional. What have I learned today, or what can I think about to say today that's top of mind? And so there was far more awareness and intentionality around what I was learning. And instead of that just passing me by, I was trying to capture it, which then subsequently has proved really useful. I have to write an article or put together a speech. I'm like, ugh, where do I start? Oh, let me go and look back through my old LinkedIn posts. Oh, yeah, this happened. And oh, yes, I thought this. And oh, yes, I articulated it that way. What do you know? I've got a whole treasure trove of stuff. And then, so I like sharing the stuff that I'm thinking about. But then equally, I like hearing what people have to say about it. So it's almost like an R&D space. A container for what I know and what I didn't know I know and what I'm learning, but then also iterating that when I engage with people's content. That's an incredibly good point. Actually, that makes a whole bunch of sense. And so that's why for me, it feels like a conversation. And one where, like I say, I'm giving, but I'm getting a whole bunch as well. And what I've generally found is when I look back at the post, I thought, it is actually the positive stuff. I think there is so much that's relentless and overwhelming and depressing. This is my experience. I'm not saying it's necessarily true, but the stuff that is positive, and please, I'm not speaking about toxic positivity. I'm not speaking about superficial positivity, but the good things that have happened to me, the good things that I see in other people, the insights and awareness in groups, there is something, it seems, in my posts, and maybe that's an extension of me, that can we create a little bit of an island of sanity, an island of, damn, that's a nice way to start the day, without being superficial, toxic, and utterly glib to the point of meaninglessness. I have found when I'm and actually, so that's the one thing. And the other thing is actually sometimes when I'm having a bad day, I'm like, I'm having a really bad day. Gosh, the support rushes in. I'm like, oh, Niven, tighten your ponytail and get on with it. But I've really enjoyed that.
Super, thank you. What I'm hearing is messaging matters. And what I'm hoping is that Blake and Joe and Niven are inspiring the folks that are here on the call in the live audience to think about what does your brand stand for? What do you want to be known for? How can you uniquely contribute your point of view in a way that creates tremendous impact? And I think Blake and Joe and Niven have done that in their own way and become subject matter experts in their niche. So let's take this to another level. You spend a lot of time and energy on developing your LinkedIn community. Did you monetize it? How did you monetize LinkedIn or turn followers into business opportunities? Like what was the takeaway for you other than putting amazing content out there? What did you get? What did you get back? Go ahead, Blake.
First, recruiting opportunities. I've had recruiters reach out to me and offer me my next great gig. Not to lie, it's happened to me more than once, because my audience for 10, 15 years has been B2B. It's always created sales opportunities and business opportunities for me, but also breaking through gatekeepers. I love interacting with someone for the first time at an in-person networking event, and then they say that they've already been connected to me, or then vice versa after meeting them, getting connected with them digitally, and then 6 months or a year later, carrying on that conversation because the relationship, may not have been in person, but it was nurtured digitally. So that's how I've monetized it. It's carried me through the years.
Excellent. I'm wondering if there's folks in the audience who have experienced the same thing. I just worked recently with a physician who had been posting on value-based care for quite a long time. And he posted on value-based care because he's very passionate about the subject. And it actually led to, same as you, Blake, a recruiter reached out to him and said, there is this incredible opportunity that I'd like to tell you a little bit about. And he felt he never would have had that opportunity had he not been posting about a subject, to Joe's point, that he really does feel passionate about. And Pamela's saying, yes, it helps to network too. So thank you, Blake. That's a great example. How about you, Joe? How did you monetize LinkedIn or turn followers into business opportunities? You have a thriving consultancy. What are some stories you can share?
Yeah, Mary, absolutely. And I will tell you that I can definitively trace 100% of the organizations that I am supporting today to someone that I met on LinkedIn. It may not be a direct referral. It may be 2 or 3 levels removed. You know, I met you. You introduced me to Niven. Niven introduced me to Blake. Blake said, I know someone, you should talk to this person because they need a fractional CEO or they need a fractional COO. And I have a conversation and it goes somewhere. And I can trace that 100% to LinkedIn. Now, it could be because my time in the military, I was not on social media. The first time I ever got onto any social media platform in my life was March of 2020 when I joined LinkedIn. And it's everything that I have done has been about relationships. And I said, okay, social media, LinkedIn's not different. It's about building relationships. And for me, it wasn't about selling anything or providing a service. In fact, you mentioned earlier, and I wanted to follow up on, were there any posts that we saw that maybe had less traction or less performance on the platform? Anytime anytime I wrote something that sounded 2% salesy, it performed much less effectively than if I was writing about leadership or I was posting an article that I did or I was doing, something in a journal format. And I love what Niven said about the R&D space. And one story I'll share is I wrote a post once about, I was very curious about AI and I was doing some research on AI. And remember, I'm not a tech person. And I wrote a post about what are things that only humans can do that AI cannot. Courage, optimism, inspiration, empathy, caring, patience. And I listed a few qualities. And then people started, hey, you forgot this, add this. Hey, you need to talk about this, add this. I started out with, I think, 15, and I ended up with 33. And that post went on, and I reposted more there. Hey, corrected copy. Thanks, everybody, for your input. And it was like Niven said, it became a conversation, and it became a learning experience. And as you said, an R&D space. So long story short, it has derived a modicum of monetary and financial value for me and for our brand, but it's all been because of our focus on relationships.
Love it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Go ahead, Niven. You're up. Share.
I can see the pattern here, so I'm going to just jump in, Mary. Look, when I first started this, I thought, no, LinkedIn is a means to an end. What's the end? It's got to translate into business opportunities. And I've changed that somewhat, actually. So I still think it's a means to an end, but the ends are different. The ends are some of the things that we've mentioned: a connection, a learning, a community, a paying it forward and supporting other people, being supported by people who I may never meet, all manner of things. And then it strikes me, and this is my choice and where I've ended up, it's very similar to that idea that success is not something that you can pursue, or no, significance is not something that you can pursue, it's something that ensues. And I have found that to be true. So I have certainly gotten a whole bunch of business from LinkedIn, but that's ensued from all the other stuff. I've actually changed what I've been pursuing. And I would agree with Joe, the relationships. I met my agent through LinkedIn, and then she takes care of a whole bunch of business opportunities. And I love saying, I've got an agent, speak to my agent. Some coaches, somebody who might be developing a board game for me. So it's been a kind of organic hot wiring of the universe through shared connections, rather than, well, if I'm not making a whole bunch of money and this is the floor this month, well, that was a waste of time. No. It's taken care of itself, and it's been an end in itself, like I say, independent of revenue.
Wonderful. And for folks who are listening in our live audience, I'm hoping that Blake and Joe and Niven are inspiring you to reflect and think about your own personal brand in terms of what messages do you want to send? Who do you want to be the go-to for? What does your brand stand for? Because they certainly have carved out niches for themselves on LinkedIn. So let's talk about other platforms. So our focus today is LinkedIn. Blake and Joe and Niven, if you're just joining now, have grown their following to over 30K. But there's Instagram, there's Facebook, there's other social platforms. So I'm curious to hear, and I'm wondering if the folks on the call are too, why specifically LinkedIn versus Instagram, Facebook, or other social platforms? What's the trade-off? Blake, what are your thoughts?
Well, my target audience is business professionals, B2B. So that's why I choose LinkedIn as my primary. Don't get me wrong, just like TV, other channels serve their purposes. I do have a Facebook audience across a few groups and channels that reaches a few 100,000, but it's a completely different content. It's more local, it's more community. It's definitely not my professional content. So that's where I live. That's where my personal brand lives because that's who I am.
And by the way, Rebecca, who is backstage right now, we're in very good hands. She has dropped in Blake and Joe's and Niven's LinkedIn profile. So if you'd like to connect with them, go ahead and do so. Joe, tell us why specifically LinkedIn versus other social platforms? What's the trade-off?
Yeah, I think similar to what Blake said, Mary, I learned early on in my military career, and I believe this is not a lesson that is unique, certainly to the defense sector, but it's applicable in life. It's applicable in just about any sector of business. The first rule of communication: consider your audience. Don't think about what you want to say and think about what goes in paragraph 2 and think about what that post is going to look like or what that communication is going to look like until you understand deeply your audience's perspective. So for example, I started out on LinkedIn because, as I mentioned earlier, I was never on social media before 2020, and I had a very astute coach who sat down with me and said, okay, here are the rules. This is how you're going to be adaptive. This is what you need to do. Log in here, upload your picture. And I had, look at that. I had a LinkedIn account. And what I learned, similar to what Blake said, when I considered my audience and my focus area being customized senior executive leadership consulting and the fractional CEO and COO space, the vast majority of the people that I wanted to have a conversation with, that I wanted to learn from, that I wanted to build meaningful relationships with were on LinkedIn. Does that mean that they aren't on Instagram? No, they are. And in fact, I know some wonderfully successful founders and CEOs of multi-million-dollar companies, and in fact, multi-billion-dollar companies that prefer other platforms over LinkedIn, and they'll tell us up front. They'll say, "I'm not on LinkedIn. Go see my Instagram account." All that being said, start by considering your audience, understanding where the people are that you want to talk to. And for me, as I build relationships, and you know this, Mary, we've talked about this many times, my foundation is when I meet someone, I have to know that that's someone that I want to build a relationship that's going to be founded upon mutual respect and that's going to forge trust. Number 2, I have to know they live their life the way they run their business. There's no difference. We call it the say-do gap. There's no difference between what you say and what you do. Who you are on Tuesday morning is who you are on Saturday night, and there's no difference. Those are the kinds of people I want to work with. If they're running a startup, if they're running a $2 billion enterprise that's global, those are the kinds of people I want to be around. And I found that. I found a lot of those kinds of people on LinkedIn, but I have also found them on other platforms. So I don't exclude them, but I consider my audience to start.
Yes, you're singing my song, Joe, as you know. Oh my gosh. I had a mentor that said once, the best marketers in the world, they know one thing. One thing. That's it. They know one thing. Guess what it is? it's their audience. They know them demographically, they know them psychographically, they know them geographically, they know them behaviorally, they know what they eat for dinner on the weekend. I mean, they know them that well. And it is so true. I'm actually writing an ebook about it because I'm so passionate about it. Like, find your bullseye. And I think Blake and Joe and Niven, you have found your bullseye. And I mean, I've said to Niven before, I feel like you're writing to me, like you're writing to an executive audience. So Niven, tell us a little bit about your thoughts. Why specifically LinkedIn versus Instagram, Facebook, TikTok? I mean, gosh, we could go right down the list of social platforms. What's the trade-off for you?
Yeah, so I had a slightly different starting point and have a slightly different approach to Blake and Joe. I think for me, I realize now, what I couldn't have articulated at the beginning, but the truth of this idea that nowadays you are who Google says you are, and your CV is what LinkedIn says it is. Mm-hmm. And I mean, somewhere on my shelf here, I've got the age of surveillance capitalism, and there's something about that makes me deeply uneasy, and I'm still not comfortable with it, and I don't think I ever will be. But I think realizing the truth of that a few years later, I suppose if I retrofit what my implicit thinking was at the time was, look, the part of myself that I want to share, the part of myself that I want to make public is my professional side. I don't want to or feel the need to share a lot of my personal stuff. I don't need to have it validated or known by the rest of the world. Whereas my professional side, the things that I think are important professionally, the kind of persona that I am rather than the person that I am behind the scenes, this is the professional stuff. And so let me go onto the platform that is most geared to that side of me and to other people's side of themselves. That is the professional. And so there was just a more natural attraction to me around what I could share, why I would share it, the part of me that I would share on LinkedIn as opposed to any of the other platforms. And I must say that still holds true for me. You're not going to see what I had for dinner. You're going to have other stuff. And of course, that's my choice. And I'm sure I sound snide when I say that. And maybe there is an element of snideness in it, but there's also an element of personal preference. And that extension of who I choose to be and who I choose not to be, and the side of me that's private.
Thank you, Niven. It's a great point. Personal or private, what do you share? It's your choice, and you need to find what works for you, what's comfortable for you, as Joe mentioned earlier, that authenticity piece. So we thank you, Blake and Joe and Niven. We could talk for another hour, I'm sure, about this particular topic. I know that Bruno and Peter have questions for you. So why don't we go ahead and let's tackle those and the rest of the time that we have together. So Bruno has a question for Niven. And the question is, how do you create a niche for yourself, just like you're being an authority in political intelligence? Great question, Bruno. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
Yeah, Bruno, thanks for that. I mean, I suppose the first thing is probably to give yourself permission. Like, this is what I'm going to focus on, as opposed to, well, if I don't focus on everything, I'm missing out on a whole bunch of opportunities and a whole bunch of people. And I'm going through this really interesting process at the moment, and one of the takeaways is that my target is not my market. So there are 1.2 billion people on LinkedIn, and that's wonderful. But the target of the people I want to connect with and I want to learn from, this is around this very specific and smaller part of things. And so I think the starting point is give yourself permission to focus on something, and then be really clear on what that is and use most of your stuff around it, but not to the point where you so pigeonhole yourself that's the only thing you can talk about. So the majority of the stuff that I speak about is political intelligence. And then every so often, something about life, something about leadership, something about culture comes up. So it's a both and that's the route that I've followed. And it's made quite a big difference for me. to be known as that and to give myself permission to be known as that without thinking, oh, suddenly I'm becoming a one-horse pony. No, I can do many things, but that's the target.
Thank you, Niven. And I think Blake and Joe have quite a bit to offer as well, to piggyback on what Niven just said. Thank you for that input. I think they could even, they could augment what Niven said about niche and authority. I mean, Blake and Joe and Niven have carved out an authoritative topic. They've become go-tos in their realm. So, Blake, what are your thoughts? How would you recommend to folks on the call, our live audience, to create a niche? Just like being an authority. I mean, you're an authority in marketing and sales, and you have a cult-like following. Honestly, I've watched it on LinkedIn. It's remarkable.
It follows passion. Talk about what you enjoy. My clients and my day job is payroll, and I have 300 subscribers to my payroll newsletter. But when I post something about sales and marketing and the challenges that I'm going through, attracting a new audience or trying a new technology, I mean, I have almost 4,000 subscribers. So it's a huge difference. There's the technical side. I try to help people with the compliance and the data side of things, but it's a very small amount of engagement. So you have to balance the content that you're putting out there. And again, it goes back into multiple formats. For the longest time, I was just posting single photos and pictures, but nowadays you have to move into video and showing your personal brand through video now to build that authority.
Yeah, sounds good. And Joe, what are your thoughts for Bruno and the other folks on the call here? Rebecca, Esther, Tidy, Peter, thank you for being here today. Bruno's question is, how do you create a niche for yourself, just like being an authority in X subject?
Yeah, Mary, I think this is really important. And I think this is something that I know I struggle with, and I think a lot of us do. We become very excited, very enthusiastic about something. We want to take action, and we don't take the time necessary to think through strategically what that means. And there's a term. Don't be victim of the paralysis of too much analysis. I like to call it decide, commit, act. Once you've done the strategic thinking and once you've done the preparation necessary and you make a decision, commit to it fully and take positive action. I think it was Carnegie that said that action creates confidence and inaction creates fear. And so it's okay to do a little bit in the direction that you want to move in and not have it all figured out. But it's not okay to not do anything because you don't have the whole plan figured out. Former boss of mine always used to say, if you ask me a question and I only know 20% of the answer, the 20% of the answer I give you is going to be 100% correct. And then I'm going to work really hard to go out and get the other 80%. And that's how I feel about building this niche. Clarity and simplicity are key. Invest the time that you need to think strategically about why you love this thing, why you're going to write about it, and like Niven said, what else out there that you want to learn about. That combination of learning and writing and communicating your voice. And then think about why that's unique, and then know your audience and get after it. And if you have 20%, that's okay. Be who you are in that 20% and thrive in that 20%, and then work to build the other 80. So clarity, simplicity, and 20% is fine.
Yeah, get after it. That's hopefully what the takeaway will be from this call today. We hope that Blake and Joe and Niven inspire the folks in the live audience to go ahead and take action, even if it's just 20% there. Just go for it and learn along the way. Monica, welcome from Kenya. And Peter has two questions. One is he'd like to know do you have guidance on how to learn the rules for LinkedIn Premium? Blake, what are your thoughts?
I mean, the rules, I think one of the biggest rules is just knowing your connection limits. And then outside of LinkedIn Premium, knowing what the best practices are in posting and the different formats of how you post. But I use LinkedIn Premium to really hone in on who my target audience is. I save those lists. I make sure that those lists, every time those different targets are doing something, posting, I have them very segmented into different industries. That helps me with different messaging.
Great. Thank you, Blake. Joe, how about you? Any guidance for Peter and the folks on the call?
Mary, I mentioned earlier, and I think it's worth circling back to when I first started my account. I worked with a coach who had been working on LinkedIn for years, and they were able to tell me, okay, here are the things you don't need to worry about. Here are the things you need to worry about. And when you go with premium, here's what you're going to do. Here's what the policies are. I use something simple like how many connections can you request a week? Well, the way I got 10,000 connections a year was I used my limit every week. And I found out what premium did for me. And then I realized, oh, in addition to the 200 connections, I'm not sure if it's 200 or 250. I have to check the algorithm, but whatever that policy is, use your maximum connection requests each week if that's what you're trying to do and you're trying to build those relationships intentionally and build those connections. And then premium also offered you the opportunity to send some targeted messages to people in addition. So maybe the connection requests are out, but you can still send a message to someone saying, hey, please connect with me. And that works. So number one, I had the coach and the mentor and the teacher who knew a lot more than me and was able to position me to begin to have some success. And then I adapted, like I said earlier, just keep adapting. And as the rules change, keep working with them. It's a tool and it works.
Yeah, I would add to that, Mary. When you and I first connected, and who knows if we'll ever know what each other looks like from the neck down, because we've only ever met each other virtually. But I feel like you're just a gem to have in my network anyway. We had this conversation, and I sent you all the notes that I took from the boot camp I went through a few years ago. I've kept them as a Word document. I don't know, there's 50 pages and a whole bunch of templates. So you can find somebody, you can go through a boot camp. You can also just drop me an email. I'll send you the same Word document I shared with Mary and that I've shared with other people. Use it, don't use it, get some guidelines and get going. And if you want to know more, that's more updated, you probably are going to need help from a coach or a boot camp or some kind of a series of classes. But, you can get that stuff from me. I'm happy to send you my notes.
Great. Thank you, Niven. And it does work. I have used it. I do have a writer who helps me write my LinkedIn posts. I've known her since the 90s. I swear she and I communicate telepathically now. We've known each other for so long that I mean, she can answer she can finish my sentences. There's a lot of trust there. And just, a remarkable human. So credit where credit is due. She does write the bulk of my LinkedIn posts. Rainey from South Africa, welcome. So Peter, we wanted to cover, you had a quick question for Niven, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap up because what I want to do is ask our wonderful panelists one game-changing piece of advice before we go. But before we do that, Niven, please talk more about the target is not the market from Peter.
Yeah, Peter, I wish I could look up on LinkedIn quickly what your background is. But I mean, I'm speaking about it as a solopreneur, an advisor and consultant, and I'm not employed. And this is the third time I've worked for myself. And it's the last time that I'm going to work for myself because I plan to work into my 80s. And I can see how profoundly different it is this time. By, as I say, having given myself permission to say, this is what I do, this is not what I do. And so in the previous two times that I had a consultancy business, and again, small, just me, I really struggled to articulate what I did because, well, I can do lots of things, guys. I can do leadership development, I can do culture, I can do strategy, you know. So because I'm trying to meet the whole market with my whole suite of abilities, it becomes so bland and so general, and so vague that I couldn't articulate it and people couldn't know where best to use me. Whereas this time it's no, this is the problem I solve in these ways. There are many other people who can I can refer you to, and I could solve your problem as well. Yeah, sure. I don't want to. This is what I want to do. So within the market of possibility, within the marketplace that's looking for my skills and my range of skills, this is my target, and it is by definition a much smaller subset of what's possible. But in that clarity, although on the face of it, it seems to be a massive trade-off because you're not reaching a bigger market, paradoxically, counterintuitively, the smaller and more focused, and like I say, I'm speaking now third time around in terms of experience, has been way more powerful than, well, I can do anything. I can do anything and everything is meaningless. So I hope
Great.
that makes sense.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Niven. Appreciate that. So we are just about 4 minutes until the end of our time. Monica, we've got your Gmail. We will get you the notes. And with a caveat, don't be intimidated by the girth of the notes. They're very detailed. I mean, it's really, really good information. Thank you, Niven, for sharing that. And what I would recommend is follow it as prescribed. The instructions are: do this the first week, try this on. Do this the second week, try this on. Like, don't be overwhelmed by the 50 pages. Just as Joe said, get started. Like, take action. Just go for it. So wanted to give a shout out to Rebecca, who is behind the scenes. We're in very good hands. She's taken very good care of Blake and Joe, and Niven and I. She's running our live session. So thank you, Rebecca. And our next live session is March 28th. That is a Friday, and we're going to have an amazing panel on the power of purpose and why it's a brand leadership imperative to articulate your purpose with conviction. This is the new leadership imperative. It's articulating that, your purpose. And we're going to wrap up with one last question. This is the game changer. We're going to go to Blake and Joe and Niven. Last question is, what is the one piece of advice that you would give to our live audience today that you would offer for someone who is looking to grow their LinkedIn audience to 30K? Blake.
So I think it resonates with a lot of what Niven and Joe was talking about. Be desperate to serve, not sell. Share your insights, help your audience. When your audience is ready, they'll come to you because you're the one that has nurtured them through the education, through the process. So that's always stuck in my head. Be desperate to serve, not sell.
Brilliant. Thank you, Joe. How about you? What's your game changer? What's your game changer tip?
Build great relationships. Like Blake said, don't sell. Inspire others. Be genuine and be authentic, but at its foundation, build great relationships, and you can't go wrong. I've read recently, and it stuck with me. You know how things stick with you. Life isn't about what you can achieve; it's about what you can become. And don't approach it in a transactional way. Approach it in a relational way. And build great relationships. Thank you.
Love it. Excellent. Niven, bring us home. We have 1 minute.
Two things. Have fun. Man, it's fun. Just talk to people. I like talking to people, and you get to talk to even more people. And I think the second thing is change your definition of success. Just, I'm not successful until I've reached my first 10,000 followers. No, I'm successful when I've posted my first 100 posts. Yeah. Okay, so just get going and get to 100 posts, and then get to 200 posts. And let that be your metric, not, I didn't get enough likes, I didn't get enough followers. I started and I kept going.
Brilliant. Thank you. So Blake, be desperate to serve. Joe, build great relationships. And Niven, have fun taking action. just have fun in the journey. Thank you so much, friends. I hope you can join me in giving a virtual round of applause for these wonderful panelists. I feel so grateful to have all three of you on the call today. This concludes our live session. So thank you, Blake. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Niven, and we'll see you.